Hello everybody, I'm Cameron and welcome back to another Python lesson. Today we are going to be talking about data types. Now in this video I want to go over three of the most basic data types that are going to be very important for you in Python. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to be using the type function in this video. Now this is a function that will give you the data type of a variable that you give it. And we'll talk more about what functions are and different qualities of them in a later video, but for now all you need to know about the function is that you give it a value and it will return something to you. So let's go ahead and we're going to do a print statement so you guys could actually see the result of this down in the console. And we're going to use the type function like this. So how we set up this function is we just, similar to the print statement, where we have print in parentheses, we put type, and now we put parentheses. So we need to put something in this type function. So what we're going to do is let's just start with a number. Let's start with 5. Let's see what data type the number 5 is in Python. So if we go ahead and we run this program, we'll see that this gives us class int. 5 is an integer value. Now if you guys know anything about integers, integers are whole numbers only. So nothing with any sort of decimal or fraction. We're talking only about whole numbers. And that's how we get an integer. So that is one data type. That's one of the big three that we're going to be talking about today. But what if we do have a decimal? So if we go ahead and we do 5.5, let's see what that's going to give us. That's going to give us float. So a floating point variable, that's any number that has a decimal in it. So other languages, it matters a little bit more because it can be a little bit tricky going back and forth between integers and floats. But Python is a very smart language. It's going to know what type to give a variable. So if we have a variable that's a whole number, it's just going to give it integer by default. And if we have a decimal number, it's going to give it a float by default. And if we need to do any mathematical operations in which we're adding or multiplying or something like that, and we modify an integer and the end result ends up having a decimal, like let's say we had 5 divided by 2, which I can put here. We'll go over mathematical operations in a later video. But if we have 5 divided by 2, that's going to give us a decimal. So we'll see that gives us float, right? Because we have 2.5. Now, this has been with numbers. So 2 of these data types that we're talking about have been with numbers. So the last one is going to be with alphabetic characters as well. So going back to the last couple videos, what I've been doing is I've been putting words into quotes. And I say the term word because I didn't want to actually give away the data type or confuse anybody by mentioning the data type before we knew too much about what it was. But the data type is actually going to be a string. So if we go ahead and we run this, we see Python shortens it to str. This is the data type of a string. The reason why it's called a string is because it's in other languages, it originates from a character variable. Now, a character meaning a singular alphanumeric character, and this would be in quotes like that. You'd have something like that, and that's just one character. A string is a bunch of them connected together. Now, the funny thing about Python is that the character variable or that data type doesn't actually exist here. So even if we have something that's a single character long, Python is going to recognize it as a string of length 1. So yeah, those are your 3 basic data types. Now, another thing to note, something about strings is that when you try and do math with them, like let's say we have, and I'll do another simple mathematical operation here. Like let's say we have 1 plus 1, right? 1 plus 1, it's going to give us 2. But let's say we had strings that were of 1. So if we do 1 as a string plus 1 as a string, it's going to give us 11. It just concatenates them together. So yeah, that's a little bit of insight on that. That's going to be more important later down the road. But depending on what data type your variable is, you're going to get a different result when you try and do mathematical operations. But guys, that has been the basic data types in Python. We have our integers, we have our floating point variables, and we have our strings. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope this helped you out. If you have any more questions, please ask in the comments. I'll be happy to answer, and I will see you in the next one.